Hello friends, we are continuing our exploration of the world of pearls. Today we will dive deeper into the technology of how pearls are formed, exploring their structure and how they are created by mollusks. Let's take a look at this picture. Here we see the internal structure of a mollusk in cross-section. As you can see, there are many different parts, but what interests us most is the mantle. Why? Because the pigment and substances in the mantle directly influence the color of the pearl formed within the oyster. For example, when we have an oyster in front of us, we can gently open it without harming it, and the color of the leaves or the mantle will indicate the color of the pearl inside. However, how do pearls actually form? It all starts with the mollusk's mantle, a protective membrane that plays a key role in the creation of pearls. This membrane secretes a layer of calcium carbonate in the form of aragonite or sometimes a mix of aragonite and calcite. These minerals, though chemically identical, have different crystal structures. They are bound together by a protein-rich horn-like substance called conchiolin. The result, a dazzling material known as nacre, or mother of pearl, the same substance that gives pearls their mesmerizing glow. Now, let's bust a common myth. Pearls rarely form because of a grain of sand. Instead, the usual culprits are organic debris, tiny parasites, or even damage that causes mantle tissue to shift within the mollusk's body. These foreign particles make their way inside when the mollusks open its shell to feed or breathe. In cultured pearls, humans take control of the process. A small piece of mantle tissue, sometimes combined with a round bead, is carefully introduced into the mollusk to stimulate pearl formation. This method ensures more consistent and high-quality pearls, making them widely available for jewelry lovers worldwide. By the way, did you know that oysters are incredibly delicate creatures? If they experience constant stress or injury, they won't produce pearls. They will simply die. It's a fragile process that requires the right condition for pearl formation. And here is a surprising fact. Oysters can actually develop cancer. Sounds unbelievable, right? Scientists have even discovered fossilized oyster shell with traces of ancient cancer cells inside. This just goes to show how sensitive these mollusks are. If an oyster is sick or severely damaged, it won't be able to form a proper pearl. So despite what some might think, pearl farming isn't just about sticking something inside an oyster, it's about carefully nurturing a living organism to create something truly precious. Since oysters are so delicate, early attempts to induce pearl formation by infecting them with parasites didn't work. The oysters simply couldn't survive the process, so people had to come up with a more sustainable and ethical approach. Instead of using harmful methods, they began inserting tiny bits or small pieces of oyster shell into the mollusks. This drastically reduced the chances of rejection or death, making pearl cultivation much more successful. Now, here is an interesting twist. After years of trial and error, researchers discovered that oyster shell from Mississippi River are somehow the most hypoallergenic for pearl-producing mollusks worldwide. No one really knows why, but for some reason these shells are the least likely to cause irritation or rejection. That is why, in modern pearl farming, small pieces of Mississippi shell are often used as implants. They are the friendliest option, so to speak, for these sensitive mollusks, helping them to ensure a smooth and natural pearl growing process. Now let's take a look at some images so you see exactly how a pearl forms. Here you can see the layers of the shell. At the bottom we have the nacre or mother of pearl layer, then the mollusk's body, and right there is the foreign object that has made its way inside. When something irritates the mollusks, whether it's a parasite or a tiny sharp fragment, the organism reacts by coating it in layers of nacre. This is its way of reducing irritation and protecting itself. If the intruder is a parasite, it eventually dies inside, and if it's a sharp object, it gets completely sealed within the nacre. Over time, this process results in the formation of a pearl. However, things don't always go perfectly. Sometimes the mollusk can't push the foreign object far enough away from the shell, and in those cases, the pearl remains partially embedded in the inner surface. These are called blister pearls, beautiful but still fused to the shell itself, forming a one-sided, dome-like structure of shimmering nacre. Interestingly, some types of oysters can never form a fully detached pearl. Instead, they always produce blister pearls, cabochon-like formations that stay fused to the shell. To harvest these, part of the shell has to be cut along with the pearl, which means these oysters can only be used once. There are farms in Thailand, for example, that specialize in this type of pearl cultivation. On the other hand, some oysters are able to push the pearl far enough away from the shell, allowing it to be removed without harming the mollusk. These oysters can be used multiple times, making them more sustainable for pearl farming. We will explore different types of pearl in more details later, and of course we will take a closer look at what they actually look like. Sometimes a pearl forms for no apparent reason without any irritant at all, and that is the most mysterious case. The oyster simply starts isolating a few of its own cells and coating them in nacre. This type of pearl is also considered non-nucleated. But what is truly fascinating is that science hasn't fully explained why this happened. One possible theory: the oyster might have an internal defense mechanism detecting certain harmful or diseased cells within itself. Instead of fighting them in the usual way, it isolates and neutralizes them by sealing in nacre, essentially turning a piece of its own flesh into a pearl. However, please keep in mind that is just our guess. It's not proven by any scientific research because this type of the pearl remain a mystery even for scientists. What we get here is a completely spontaneous, unexplained pearl formed not because of an intruder, but possibly as a survival instinct of the oyster itself. Nature is full of surprises. Despite its mysterious origins, this unique type of pearl is now widely used in freshwater pearl cultivation. Researchers have identified certain oyster species that are naturally more inclined to form non-nucleated pearls. Instead of inserting a bit or irritant, pearl farmers simply place a small piece of epithelial tissue from another mollusk into the oyster. The result? A pearl that forms without any parasite, shell fragment or foreign object inside. Just layers of beautiful, naturally deposited nacre. This technique has revolutionized freshwater pearl farming, allowing for the production of stunning pearls while keeping the process as natural and sustainable as possible. Alright, so now we have got a basic understanding of how pearls are formed. Now let's examine a cross-section one more time. The image is from the internet, so excuse the quality. Anyway, you can see the pearl in the center and some layers around it. So let's explore what these layers are. In the center, we have the nucleus, which serves as a crystallization core covered in mineral layers made of conchiolin, which we discussed earlier in the video. At some point, the growth of conchiolin layer stops and the mollusk begins to produce nacre, forming the next layer. I wonder though how the mollusk knows to switch from conchiolin to nacre. It's like, maybe I'm feeling like it's the right time. It is fascinating and it is still a mystery to me. It's clear that the quality of the mollusk's life influences the layer's growth and appearance, but why this specific sequence happens is a big question. So if anyone knows, feel free to share in the comments. Now, Talking scientific language, a pearl is essentially a mineral formation, usually round but not always, made of thin layered crystals with a radial structure. This formation is tied to the animal physiology, which is sensitive to environmental changes. In some regions, during winter, mollusks can even enter a state akin to hibernation, slowing down all processes, including nacre production. If a mollusk gets stressed or sick, it might stop producing layers properly, resulting in pearls without a nacre layer at all. They look very unappealing, trust me. They just have very boring porous structures without any luster. And the oysters produced in such often end up as a fancy meal in restaurants. Meanwhile, well-behaved mollusks that produce beautiful shiny pearls continue living their best lives on the farm. Let's keep talking science. The nacre layers forming the pearl consist of extremely thin, elementary layers of organic plates oriented perpendicularly to the surface. Now let's refer back to our image for a clearer visualization of how these layers are structured. This picture shows that the variety of shades in nacre comes from light reflecting and refracting through these layers, creating that beautiful iridescent glow. It's all about the play of light on these delicate layers. In the professional world of jewelry, terms like orient and overtone are used to describe these optical effects. We will dive deeper into that topic a bit later. For now, it's important to understand that orient and overtone are due to the interference and diffraction of light within the multilayered structure of these microplates. Here is another microscope image of a pearl cross-section. You can clearly see the difference between the prismatic layer, which is porous and dull, and the nacreous layer, which creates the iridescent shine. How the mollusks decide to switch from prismatic to nacreous layer is still a mystery, as I mentioned before, and if anyone has any insights, please share. It is fascinating to learn more. Pearls, despite being organic, are quite durable for everyday wear. And when I say durable, I don't mean that they can withstand being hit with a hammer. Even diamonds, which have a lot of myth and fake internet videos showing them surviving hammer blows, shatter into dust if struck lightly with something hard, especially when placed on a solid surface. We even have conducted experiments where Konstantin, the company owner, personally broke diamond and jade with a hammer, and they easily turned into dust. So don't believe the myth. Check out our debunking videos with real experiments in this YouTube channel and handle your gemstones with care. Any gem, be it a diamond or a pearl, can scratch, chip and become damaged, so they always require careful handling. Especially when you're talking about the gem which brings you 30% price increase each year, and I'm talking about natural pearls right now. This is incredible, especially as pearl production is declining due to environmental factors, making them even more valuable. So in this case, alas, environmental challenges work in investors' favor, including ours. In our next episode, we will have more practical content, including videos from the farm. For now, let's summarize what we have learned. Here we see a picture showing the nacre layer one more time. This image is from an abalone shell. Oyster creates their inner shell layer from the same material as the formation process is identical. Pearl formation usually starts due to an irritant, but there are rare cases of non-nucleated pearls forming spontaneously without a known cause. And the freshwater mollusks are more likely to produce these non-nucleated pearls than marine oysters, though it happens in both. These pearls have a thicker nacre layer compared to the inner porous material, making them a bit different. To dispel any myth once and for all, let's say one more time out loud: cultured pearls and wild pearls are equally valuable. Cultural pearls aren't artificial, they are just as natural as wild ones, with the only difference being that humans initiate their formation. Most pearls on the jewelry market are cultured because harvesting wild oysters is often restricted by law in many countries. And another important point, freshwater and salted pearls don't fundamentally differ in quality or price. If a pearl is of good quality, it doesn't matter where it comes from, freshwater or salt water. Another important point is the thickness of the nacre layer. We have looked at various images showing difference between the inner porous layer and the nacre layer. Recently, a standard was established in Tahiti that the minimum acceptable nacre thickness is 0.6 millimeters. However, this doesn't mean that the remaining 5-6 millimeters or whatever it is between the nucleus and the surface is just a filler. Instead, it often includes a significant portion of non-lamellar, porous material with a smooth, beautiful nacre layer on top. The key here is a consistent, high-quality nacre layer for a visually appealing pearl. To determine the thickness of the nacre layer in pearls, a small hole is typically drilled either all the way through or just to the nucleus. This hole is usually not visible and it doesn't affect the pearl's value. By examining that, under special equipment of course, one can measure the layers and get a detailed view of the pearl's internal structure. So I think we have summarized the most important things. I hope you have learned something new. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And we will see you next time to keep diving deeper and get more practical details about beautiful pearls. So far, take care and goodbye.